So, Rich, what's on the schedule today? Anything to get people to leave your channel because you're not a death battle YouTuber? Well, since you asked, my little spiky-haired asshat, I've decided to actually do a video game review. Figured I'd finally take Cap and Sean's advice and branch out on something. Oh, fun. So what game are you gonna cover? 'Cause you gotta make a good first impression. I actually just got done beating my favorite underrated game of all time, so it makes sense for the first video game review I'm doing, I would tackle and defend it from a bunch of unnecessary hate. Oh, so you're gonna review Halo 5? What? No! That game just flat out sucks. No, Kuma. Something better than Halo 5. Something that the world needs right now. Hello everyone on the internet. My name is Saber King, and yes, you saw right. We're going to do my first ever video game review, and it'll be me tackling my favorite underrated entry of the Arkham franchise. Now I know, you're down below asking, Saber, why not cover Asylum or City, since both of those are the most common and the most beloved entries of Arkham? Well, simple. I love both of those games just as much as the next guy, but I don't feel like repeating something that everyone else has already said or done to death. Plus, since Origins is actually my favorite game of the whole series, that actually gives me a lot more to cover. Anyway, I will be going through all of the reasons why I love this game to death, bring up all of the pros, and address the cons that critics and fans have had with it over the past 7 years. So, let's get into it! Both the story and gameplay are what makes this series so well beloved and pretty much everlasting. So, when I first got this game on Christmas Day back in 2013, my playthrough of it was exactly the same as City. Returning back to the mechanics felt like it was more simplified, but somehow feeling at its peak. Nothing strays away from the previous two entries. Almost everything will be just exactly how they were when we last left off. However, WB Montreal managed to actually add some new animations, enemy types, and gadgets, making Origins feel like it is a legitimate passion project instead of a cash grab. Words, unfortunately, can't describe what I'm saying, so you kind of have to play the games in order to feel and understand what I am trying to say. However, playing it again twice on my PS3 for this review, nothing in it actually made me feel like I was losing my touch or I had been really rusty. Instead, quite surprisingly, gaining combos and hitting special takedowns were the most easy yet challenging element when it came to the gameplay, especially when you have large groups of enemies surrounding you. As stated before, we don't just get the same enemy types from the last game, but we get new ones, like brutes that require stunning before you take them down, or ninjas who can actually block some of your attacks and even your combos, making you having to counter them twice in order to efficiently take them down. The new gadgets also add a whole new way of taking down enemies during stealth modes. Plus, we have gotten something that we unfortunately should have gotten in City, but it's here. Fast travel via the Batwing, which came in handy a lot during my playthrough. Yeah, gliding to destinations is still awesome, but if you're like me and you just want to shake it up and get to your area faster, then you'll love this mechanic. As far as the story goes, this is where Corey May and his crew delivered the best Batman story in the Arkham series, period. Having it be set a decade before Asylum takes place, and not 5 years, we get to see a young and aggressive Bruce who is hard on criminals, while also at the same time refusing any help from Captain Gordon or even taking the advice of his surrogate father, Alfred, who throughout the game has been worried for his son going down a destructive path. As for the villains, this time around, Batman must go up against 8 assassins hired by Black Mask to take him out by the end of the night, each one being more and more difficult than the last, pushing Bruce to his limits. All of these things make Origins feel less like an unoriginal and boring element, as the haters and critics have put it, and more of a second best Batman story to come out of a video game series, but also fixing the problem that I and some had with City, and that it was way overbloated with all of these villains that just complicated the story it was trying to tell. Oh sure, there are flaws with this game, do not get me wrong, nothing is perfect. The only times I really had problems with the game is where it would have low frame rates and there would be the occasional glitches. Other than that, my playthrough was pretty good. Each time I played the story, it only kept getting better and better, keeping me glued to my seat, never feeling bored or uninvested. Also, just seeing the final cutscene makes me feel satisfied and triumphant. I'm sorry, I can't go into too much detail. It's just best you find out for yourself. As I mentioned earlier, this game has one of, if not the best stories in the series overall. Same goes for the acting, which unfortunately was covered with a lot of controversy back then because it was going to have a younger cast and not bring back or reunite Kevin Conroy or Mark Hamill. Instead, we would get Roger Craig Smith to voice Batman and Troy Baker as the Joker. Now, say what you will about these two, I know there has been a lot, but I stand with the majority of everyone. These two nailed the characters, mainly Roger, who unfortunately at the time was put through so much stress, not only having to live up to what Kevin had done before him, but also earn the blessings of the fans to play this character. But my first reaction when I heard of this was I was excited, and all I could think of was Sonic is gonna play Batman. Yeah, those were my exact thoughts on this news. But hey, 17-year-old me was completely won over by the end. Roger gave an outstanding performance. He embodied Batman from beginning to end, erasing all doubts cast upon him. He perfectly captures that young, arrogant, brutally tortured phase Bruce had gone through in his first 2 years of being Batman. And if you think I'm just talking out of my ass, then see for yourself.
I want teeth. I want answers. Where's Cobblepot? Mask, put a bounty on my head. Where is he?
Even in the Lacey Tower scene, just hearing his narration of how he's telling the story makes it even more powerful. But by far, when it comes to his role as Batman, every fan of this game, myself included, points to this scene, which plays out just after his first encounter with the Joker. That moment convinced me why Kevin couldn't be here, because his Batman isn't what this Batman needs to be, and Roger was just the perfect man for the job. And hell, even towards the end, we see a heart-wrenching emotional moment with Bruce that changes him into becoming the true Batman we all know and love. Okay, you're asking, but what about the Joker? Well, despite my criticisms of Troy just being a younger Mark Hamill in the game, when in reality that was actually what was required, but because this is a younger Joker who starts out wanting Batman dead, but then after falling to his end, Bruce jumps off and saves him, making Joker question himself.
Those were two very, very bad men. Oh, the things they've done. You really don't want to know. They deserved death. Just like me.
Then we get the famous One Bad Day, Joker telling and showing us what happened to him, saying that he didn't understand life, why it was meant the way it was, until he met Batman, before seeing him as a demon that discarded and turned him into a monster. But now, he's grown more fascinated with him, and sees him as a kindred spirit, leading to this amazing ending where Batman and Joker's relationship officially begins, which Roger and Troy completely blow it out of the water.
This rage, all directed at me, and for what? You know, if you'd actually let me finish a sentence, you might learn something. You might learn that we're not so different. You might learn something about yourself.
You need to learn to shut up.
Is all this for you, or for me? You must know I'm a lost cause. Oh, but there's still hope for you. Yes. Oh, I've got great hopes for you. So come on. Do stop now. What are you waiting for?
The game has much more to offer than what critics and haters initially said at the time. The Gotham we see isn't just a reused skin of City, but it also adds a whole new section, making it actually even more bigger than the previous game. The crew put so much detail into having it feel alive, but also tons of Easter eggs and active crimes that you would have to stop. I just spent so many hours gliding around, looking and taking everything in. But if all that doesn't sell you, then go look up some of the beautiful concept art showing just how much care and passion WB Montreal had for the game at the time. The music by Christopher Drake, who, as you may know, has worked on some of the DC animated films. His score to Origins is by far one of the best we've had in the series since, well, City. And the multiplayer, well, unfortunately no longer around, was a great ton of fun. Yes, multiplayer in a Batman game. I actually did manage to get in a few matches back in the day, and while I unfortunately didn't win all of them, it was still a ton of fun. Now I can talk about this game for a whole hour and not be bored, because, as you've heard, I fucking love Origins. Yeah, it's not the greatest of all time, and definitely has some big flaws. 7 years ago, when it launched, it had glitches, lags, frame rate drops, and the occasional freeze on the PS3. But, you know what? That was all because WB Montreal was a new studio at the time. They didn't have any experience, and were burdened with a ton of pressure from everyone to try and make a great game. With the odds stacked against them, Rocksteady spent 4 years developing a finale that they just no longer cared about, especially when you consider they made this franchise. However, WBM actually gave a damn and put everything into their first and only big studio game, only to have it not be remastered because it was, I don't know, easier to just remaster the other two and give a shitty VR game to the Arkham series. That's unfortunately canon. Point is, while most saw this as an unnecessary bare-bones sequel that wasn't worth playing, some of us saw the complete opposite. Arkham Origins is an underrated masterpiece that gave us a game worthy of being in the franchise with its two predecessors. Everything was taken seriously and treated with love for the character in his 74 years of storytelling. It may not, unfortunately, have been the first like Asylum, nor had it been deemed the best superhero game of all time like City, but it definitely gave us a damn good Batman game that will forever stand the test of time.
Stopped his heart. That is funny. Good one, Bats. This is going to be fun.
Maybe I can give them something to believe in. Maybe he can give them something to